Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jane Mossbacher Morris, founder and CEO To The Market, June Sarpong, broadcaster and director of creative diversity, BBC, and Stephanie Benedetto, founder, Queen of Raw.
Hello, everybody. It's so wonderful to... Oh, round of applause. We'll take it. It's so wonderful to be in New York City and to be able to be in person with each other as well as virtually. What a wonderful hybrid model that we have here. So to my right, we have the wonderful Jane Mossbacher Morris, founder and CEO of To The Market. And on the screen, joining us virtually, hi, we have Stephanie Benedetto, CEO and co-founder of Queen of Raw. So I'm going to start with you first, of course, Jane, because you're with me. So can you tell me a bit about what To The Market does? Obviously, this session is about the rise of sustainable fashion and how ethically sourced product and apparel has really disrupted the fashion market, particularly during the COVID crisis, where consumers are expecting more from the brands that they patronize and are also looking at how we ensure that the way we shop doesn't damage the planet in the same way. And again, that even feeds into what we eat as well as what we wear. So starting with you, Jane, tell us a bit more about To The Market.
Thank you. So To The Market focuses on connecting ethical and sustainable suppliers who specifically make apparel, accessories, and home goods with brands, retailers, and corporations who are interested in sourcing and manufacturing more ethically and sustainably, but may struggle to know how to identify an ethical and sustainable factory, may not have the bandwidth to do so, may not have the expertise. So To The Market's focus is really making it as turnkey as possible for brands, retailers, and corporations to align their values with their purchasing power.
I love it. I love it. Now, obviously, I think what I would really love to ensure that the audience gets to hear more about is you and I were talking backstage and hearing about your backstory is incredible, and that you don't come from the fashion world. You come from quite the opposite. Tell us about your background and how that influenced to set this business up.
Yeah, we were joking backstage that I never would have guessed that I would be in retail, but I couldn't be happier being here. I started my career working in counterterrorism at the U.S. Department of State, focused on trying to help women fight terrorism. And one of the bigged takeaways I had
was... With a lot of work in Afghanistan.
With a lot of work in Afghanistan. And one of the biggest impacts that I had was that for women to really drive change, they needed access to resources.
Yeah.
So I then began to focus on, okay, job creation and job sustainment. What are the primary employers of women, particularly in the developing world? And realized that retail manufacturing is one of the largest economies in the developing world. It's one that is absolutely dominated by the hard work of women, but it's one that actually hasn't had very much strategic investment in the supply chain.
Yes.
Which is quite a contrast to agriculture, the largest economy in the developing world, which has enjoyed a lot of strategic investment, led by incredible brands like Starbucks, like the distribution that Whole Foods has allowed so many new organic, fair trade brands. That has not yet happened in retail.
In fashion, yeah. Brilliant. Well, let's come to you, Stephanie. Tell us more about the Queen of Raw.
Thrilled to be here virtually and excited to be joining with everybody. So yes, my name is Stephanie Benedetto and I'm the Queen of Raw. And I'm on a mission to solve the world's water crisis. And my focus is fashion and textiles,
Brilliant.
Which by some accounts is actually the second biggest polluter in the world of clean water globally. Yeah. And I don't like to harp too much on the scary statistics, but I'll give you one. If we continue at the current pace of textile production, by 2025, 2/3 of the entire world's population will face shortages of fresh water and be exposed to hazardous chemicals from textile production alone. So it's not 100 years from now, right? It's not 50 years from now, it's today and it's on our shores. And, you know, when I looked at this issue, I thought fashion, textiles, it's such a powerful industry. My family's actually been in it for over 100 years. But why does it create all this waste, right? All this unused inventory from raw materials to finished goods. And through the pandemic, the amount of waste is actually now at $288 billion a year worth of unused stuff that just sits in warehouses collecting dust or gets burned or sent to landfill. And so to tackle this issue, you know, we built a solution. We built a global marketplace with integrated software. So businesses small to large could buy and sell their unused inventory, keep it out of landfill, and obviously turn what would be pollution into profit. So we've saved 1 billion gallons of water to date, and we're just getting started.
Incredible. And so when you decided to set up the business, what was the biggest challenge for you? Because as you say, your family has been in the apparel industry for a very long time. It's in your blood. And you were coming at it in a way from a completely opposite direction. What was the difficulty in getting everything off the ground?
You know, I think it's interesting. I obviously grew up in this industry, but I was not formally in the industry. I was actually an attorney on Wall Street, but ended up representing a lot of fashion, technology, and startup clients. And at the end of the day, we get back to our roots and who we are. The biggest challenge when we looked at this years ago was that we knew how important this was, not just for people and planet, but also for a business's profit. This waste is expensive. It eats up to 15% of these businesses' bottom lines, but it wasn't necessarily top of mind for all of the big companies. Well, fast forward to today, right? And for better or worse, with everything going on and through the pandemic, these issues have become top of mind for every C-suite, right? They know that they have to do better for people and planet while also doing better for their profit. And this is a key way that they can get going and get started and take advantage of the opportunity while doing good.
Completely. Why do you think the industry has been so slow? As someone that's a bit of an outsider, what's your view on that?
Well, I think it's hard. I mean, when I look at why was agriculture so successful in really helping to drive more ethical and sustainable food and beverage products, while retail has really struggled in apparel and accessories and home goods, I mean, part of it is that in agriculture, it's much more commoditized. So it's easy, for example, to aggregate production across multiple makers, to tell a clear story. People better understand many of the certifications that exist in the agriculture sector. So it's super common to turn over like a chocolate bar or a coffee and see fair trade or direct trade or bird friendly. So part of it is education. Part of it is that logistically it's very difficult. But I think another part of it is that many global north companies got very, very reliant on overseas manufacturing, leveraging brokers. And there was a lot of opacity that was driving that model. So it used to be that if I was a US-based buyer, I would go to a retail broker who had factories overseas, and I would say, here's the shirt I want to have made, and I didn't ask any questions about who was making it, how it was made,
whether
just
that process
aligned with my values. And so many companies really got used to that model, and so it's a big adjustment for them to begin to ask questions, to educate themselves as to what are even the questions I should be asking.
So in a nutshell, are you sort of a 2.0 version of what that middleman used to be, as it were, but doing it ethically and in the right way?
We are really, To the Market is hyper-focused on making it as easy as possible for brands, for retailers, for corporations to connect and work successfully with ethical and sustainable suppliers around the world who are hyper capable. They've just largely been shut out from the global supply chain because they've been on the outside of the sort of old network of retail brokers. And so democratizing access to participate in the incredible purchasing power that exists, particularly in the global north, is a huge focus of our business.
Can you talk about the female economic empowerment side of the business too, and why that means so much to you?
This is a really interesting industry because women are very, very involved in it, but they typically are involved on the worker level, not necessarily on the leadership level. And to be clear, I love women and men, but I think it's really interesting that this is an industry where the vast majority of garment workers are women, but the vast majority of factory owners are men. The vast majority of buyers at retail organizations are women, meaning the people making, writing POs, the vast majority of C-suite is men, and then the vast majority of investors typically are men. This is really interesting that this is such a female-focused industry, and yet the leadership is not particularly reflective of the population.
Of the customer.
And so I think it's really exciting to be a part of a company that is not only focused on partnering with women-owned and operated suppliers among the type of suppliers we work with, but also partnering with female investors. I mean, so really looking at creating economic opportunity for women in our cap table, all the way to women that might be making the products that we're selling into retail organizations.
Brilliant, thank you. So if I could come back to you, Stephanie, if we look at how Queen of Raw really, in a way, educates companies about their own product and their own inventory. How has the pandemic impacted what you do in terms of how the customer is now being educated? Because I presume that this is now a sort of an added value buy, in that this is a product that otherwise would have ended up in landfill, in an industry that's so much about what's in fashion now, what is of the moment. We're now looking at things in a much more sustainable and meaningful way. Are you seeing that come through?
You're absolutely right. I mean, if any good can come out of what's going on in the world, it is this awareness, right, to what matters, to our health, to family, to loved ones, and connecting with things again, right, in a way. And supply chains in the world in so many ways slowed down, in other ways sped up. But I think what's been really interesting is, you're right, we have built a technology that we are selling to an industry that in many ways was still doing business the way my great-grandfather did in 1896, right? Good old pen and paper, or maybe if they're a little better, an Excel spreadsheet. But they didn't always know what was going on in their own supply chains. And when things slowed down and they didn't have to operate as fast, they could take a moment and look at, what's going on in my supply chain from a tier 1 to a tier 14 supplier? Where does all this waste sit? Why do I have it? And understand from that how they can, of course, minimize it and digitize it and do better tomorrow. And that's really, we really want to come in and build that Amazon or Alibaba done right, with more trust, quality, curation, and sustainability, because the future supply chain is going to be one that is more on demand, more local, more sustainable, as Jane was talking about. And how can we power that? But this isn't just about the biggest companies in the world. This is also, as you mentioned, connecting with the end consumer on a new level. You as a student, a maker, a crafter, a quilter, an individual, being able to purchase something that is rescued or being reused or repaired or recycled in some way, and being able to scan that QR code at point of purchase and see in your fingers the water, the toxins, the carbon emissions, and the dollars saved by the actions you take. You can connect on a whole other level and be a part of something so much greater and so much more meaningful.
Amazing.
That's what we can do.
I love it. And is that the kind of thinking as well, Jane, that you encourage the factories that you work with to employ?
I think a lot of the communication that we have with the makers that we partner with, and some of them are artisan groups, many of them are factories, is that the more that they're doing on sustainability and on ethical labor, the better it is for their business competition. They are that much more attractive, that much more viable as a factory that we would want to partner with, because just as Stephanie was noting, I mean, as there is more and more education around consumers, around fashion, they're asking more specific questions. Why is organic cotton better than conventional cotton? What is in fact the carbon emissions I was able to avoid because I chose the GOTS certified organic cotton versus the conventional cotton? And without having those robust systems in place at the factory level, you can't meaningfully capture qualitative or quantitative data around your environmental and social footprint. And so it's certainly, I think, just as Stephanie noted, bringing technology to the sector, which both of us are doing through Queen of Raw, through To the Market. We're helping to digitize an industry that is so legacied, that has been, just as she said, been run on spreadsheets at best.
At best.
At best, is in itself been quite a feat, let alone trying to layer on the ethical focus, the sustainability focus. But it's in that digitization that you're actually able to have data synchronicity. You're actually able to see what is the positive impact that my choices are having from that sustainability standpoint and from that ethical footprint standpoint.
You're right. And you as a business and you as a consumer, right? You don't need to worry about the technology. That's our job, to understand how blockchain, how machine learning and AI work, right? But if it can be easily consumed. You know, the final piece I kind of just wanted to mention too is obviously this takes the bottom down and the top up in order to make this change. But it also requires, obviously, collaborations and partnerships.
Yeah.
And I know that's one that Jane does a lot, that I've worked a lot on. We were a part of the New York Circular City Initiative, backed by government, along with H&M, Unilever, and Cisco. And we actually produced a white paper during COVID showing how many good jobs could be created and how much money could be saved and made by New York City going circular in the coming years.
Wow.
But it wasn't just about changing the laws and slapping businesses with millions of dollars in liability on the books. It's also about reimagining the future and finding solutions like To the Market, like Queen of Raw, that can help businesses offset that coming legal liability while building for the tomorrow that we all want to thrive and survive in.
And what does this also mean for consumers in terms of costs? Because at the end of the day, as it stands, obviously, as this becomes the norm in terms of business practice, that won't be the case, but as it stands, it's much more expensive to buy ethically made products, and particularly in an industry like fashion, where everything is about cheap and fast. How do you combat that?
Well, go ahead, Stephanie.
Please, both of you.
You know,
Stephanie, you go first.
For so long, that S word, sustainability, has meant a lot of things to a lot of people. And one of the common conceptions is that it automatically costs more money to participate. Well, the good news is, with all the resale, reuse, recirculation, recycling going on, what we're actually doing, and Jane alluded to it earlier, is democratizing access to resources and technologies, which actually means it saves you time, money, and resources. We can actually get you like quality goods that are at a steep discount, up to 80% or more sometimes off wholesale, because it is rescued, repurposed, and reused. So you can find things that are both economically advantageous while also doing good. And then how can you say no to that, right? So I think that's something that people are starting to realize now more and more, the economic sustainability of sustainability.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think creative solutions like Queen of Raw are critical in making it easier for consumers, for brands, for retailers to repurpose, whether it's yardage or it's finished goods. And in our case, we've really focused on actually selling into off-price. And we've done that because we've really wanted sustainability to be accessible to people of all price points.
Yes.
And there are creative solutions that allow you to be competitive from a price standpoint, whether that means that you're being creative about the way that you're buying yardage, the way that you are moving the product from point A to point B. But there are definitely creative ways to make sustainability accessible so that it's not just something that exists in luxury, that's out of the hands of the vast majority of the population. Sustainability is of interest to everyone at every price point. We had a buyer, an off-price buyer, that said to me, look, and this is, sort of on the same level as like a TJ Maxx, and she said to me, look, the young men who come into my store, if they see a product that is similarly priced and one is sustainable, they will unquestionably pick up the one that is sustainable. And so I really believe that the interest in ethical and sustainable production is at every socioeconomic level. It's a function for people like Stephanie and I to make it accessible for more and more brands, retailers, and corporations to then make that product price accessible to more and more consumers.
Yes, well, I love that we're abbreviating names. Clearly, you two know each other very well.
We do. As big as the world seems, it can be close and connected in wonderful ways.
Fantastic. Well, we've just got a minute to go. Before we go, I'd like to ask the audience to do us a favor. For those of you that took pictures, if you could tag us all, that'd be amazing, so we can repost, because obviously we couldn't take pictures ourselves as we were talking. So thank you for that. How would you like to leave What's the one sort of takeaway you'd like the audience to have before you go? So, Steffi, I'm going to come to you first.
You know, for me, it's never doubt that the small acts that you take, when you add them up together, can have a massive impact. That one t-shirt that you buy one less of a year actually saves 700 gallons of water, which is enough clean water for a person to drink for 3 years. So we're just getting started. Let's go change the world.
Amazing point. And to build on that, absolutely, everyone can align your values with your purchasing power. We spend far more on products that we're interested in buying than we are able to afford to give away to charity.
Wow.
So we have much more of an impact in the way that we vote with our wallet than we're able to from a philanthropic standpoint. So I encourage everybody to take a look at who they're spending money with and whether that aligns with their values.
Brilliant. And you made the bags, didn't you?
And we made the bags.
Thank you. Well, on that note, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you.
Thank you.